Hello, my name is Jenna Bosiger, and thank you for watching Cryptid Cryptids. On this episode, I started off going state by state with Arizona, but since I used to live in Arizona, I needed to break it up into parts. So the first part is going to be this episode, which is going to be about the Kachinas. Every state has their unique features. For example, in Ohio, the mounds were of major significance. But in Arizona, it's not mounds that are of significance, but stone castles, stone monuments, and cliff dwellings. Before I get started with this first topic, which is the Kachinas, I need to give a bit of a disclaimer, and it's important. So I did my best to research the Kachinas, but I am not Hopi, and I am not an expert. There's no source that I can use to back up any information about the Kachinas factually. I can't fact check anything that I say about the Kachinas, and I definitely don't want to say anything untrue, but at the same time, the Hopi are very secretive about their knowledge that they have managed to maintain because they don't feel any desire to share that knowledge with the public. At least not at this point in time. And so I want to make sure I make it very clear that this video is just out of curiosity. And then I also had a personal experience happen involving Kachinas that was very impactful. Because of what happened to me, I did kind of think of the Kachinas as being of the same species as Bigfoot, what we would call Bigfoot today here. At times, I do speculate about possible meanings of things, and that's just me speculating. And the whole reason that I'm doing this is because I'm so curious. Brief, quick explanation of some characteristics of the Kachina. They live in the San Francisco Peaks in the Kachina Wilderness, which is near Flagstaff, Arizona. They're said to come down the winter solstice and then go back up into the mountains in the summer solstice. They're spiritual beings. They're links between God and man, or between the material and the spiritual. There's different Kachinas for different things. They could be animals, people, ancestors, even things from the natural world. I took a very literal approach to trying to research them, and there are stories that seem like there was contact that was being made with the Kachinas when the Hopi first came to the area. They were already there, and they had some interesting interactions, which we can talk about. But then the Kachinas, for whatever reason, stopped coming. The tradition of dolls, making dolls of them, and in the dances. The theme of most Kachinas in paintings, like Dwayne Dishta, for example, the Kachinas are pictured in the villages. They look like they're coming through the villages, just kind of rolling through. Some of them, making their noises and their calls. Some of them poking around. The other theme that you'll find in Kachina paintings is of the Hopis dancing and playing music with the Kachinas in kivas. So you can see it's almost kind of like it morphed into that maybe. They were coming through the villages, and you gotta, the other thing is that the Kachinas don't speak, they don't communicate with in the same language as humans. So, what better way to communicate than to just, be listening to these music and dancing together. As you can imagine, not every tribe would appreciate this and, want to join in and try to communicate on their level. The Hopi refer to the Kachinas, some of them as being ancient ancestors, spirits. So, if the Kachinas did this to the Hopi, they likely did it to some of the other tribes in the area, like maybe the Navajo. And maybe the Navajo did not take kindly to this. And if that was the case, they would probably think of them as ancient enemies. So you probably see where I'm going with this. I don't know for sure, but I've been finding a lot of similarities between Kachinas and the Anasazi. I'm going to look into it, but I don't know. But what I will say is that the Hopi refer to the Anasazi as being ancient ancestors very favorably. And the Navajo, who are right next to them, think of that group of people as being ancient enemies. And I could see maybe that being why. That's a possibility. But, the facts remain that the Navajo and the Anasazi were enemies. And the Hopi and the Anasazi were not enemies. Here's an interesting Kachina story and Hopi history. So the Hopi were one of the few cultures able to maintain a lot of their heritage and knowledge because the missionaries, they were very busy on the West Coast in California. And then, coming from the East Coast, they were doing their thing. By the time they got to the Hopi, they got there late. They reached the Hopi kind of late. The missionaries knew that the Native Americans, part of their tradition and culture was passed down orally. So knowing this, that is what the missionaries did. They separated the children from the adults and stopped that flow of information and knowledge. Put the kids in public school, and that's how they took the culture away from the Native Americans. It's tragic. The first missionaries that ever came and reached the Hopis came with their agenda, which was to let the Hopi know that they're coming with information about the one and only true God, and that their way of life was barbaric and savage. Not my words, theirs. And so I'm sure they thought the Kachinas were demonic. And so I'm sure they were told to stop with all of that. And so the Hopis said, okay, well, if it's true, you have information about the one and only true God, then we're going to need you to take a series of tests to prove it. And the missionaries took the tests, and guess what? They didn't pass. So they were told to leave. They were told, no thanks, we don't want any. You need to leave. Now, missionaries, as you know, as everybody knows, they don't take no as no. They take that as a challenge. They aren't going to budge anytime soon. They stay. And this story goes, they were given several warnings. Just saying. It was clear they were given more than one warning to go. They didn't. So a new Kachina was created one night. The name of this Kachina is the priest killer Kachina. And one night when they were sleeping, the missionaries received a visit from the priest killer Kachinas. And they did exactly as their name says. A lot of time went by before the next missionaries came to the Hopis, and by then there had been some laws passed that stopped this. The Hopis did not, they still experienced, the missionaries coming in and trying to convert them, but they were not forced to stop doing whatever they were doing. The Hopis still have that ancient knowledge. But now you hear about a lot of ancient cultures having this knowledge, scientific knowledge of astronomy, very advanced. And the Hopi have been able to maintain it, and it's part of their history and prophecy. They talk about pole shifts. When it comes to the blue Kachina prophecy, pretty widely accepted that the blue Kachina represents and is symbolic of a blue star in the sky. The blue star could be Sirius, because the Anasazi, the Hopi, they all have a really interesting connection with that star constellation. Binary star systems are way more common than single solitary solar systems because we have these periodic mass extinctions. They also know about the mass extinctions. They're talking about fifth dimension, and they know about the flood. They survived the flood by living underground with the help of the ant people. Now, I think that they are ant Kachinas. But again, I don't know. And they stayed down there with them until they were able to emerge to the surface and start life again. Another interesting coincidence is that the name for the blue Ahote, or the blue Kachina, is Sakwasohu. And compare that with the name Sasquatch. Is that a coincidence? But it's also in the prophecy, and it talks about the blue star Kachina. When he dances in the plaza and removes his mask, then the people will know. And I mean, taken literally, it could mean that, these cryptid species are going to be revealed to us, and it could tell us something about our own origin and creation. The earth being covered in rivers of stone, which is cement. And they also talk about the sky being covered or filled with a web. Now, I don't know if they mean literally the World Wide Web, or they're talking just about like the invisible telecommunications from the satellites. If you could see those things, it would look like a web. I showed you one of my favorite painters, fine artists, Dwayne Dishta. Now I'm going to show you another artist that I love. He is also a fine artist, a painter, and his name is Fritz Scholder. And I wanted to share some of his artwork because they're so amazing. He was a very successful artist, but Kachinas are used to sell so many products. I mean, Kachinas are used to sell food and drink, hotels, bars, alcohol. And the number one most exploited Kachina is the Kokopelli. The Kokopelli is said to be a trickster, a joker. He carries a pouch that has corn seeds that he throws on the ground. And he usually has a group following him because he's playing the flute and everybody loves his music. Apparently, he must be a very good-looking Kachina because the ladies love him. And actually, his music makes everybody feel aroused. So he's also known as a fertility Kachina. Not to mention, after he leaves, all the corn starts sprouting. And what's interesting about corn is that nobody understands how corn came to be, because it's like the only plant that can't survive without humans. So nobody understands where corn came from, but according to Hopi tradition, the corn came from the Kokopelli Kachina. Well, that's going to do it for this episode about Kachinas. I mean, I could have kept going. I'm so fascinated by the Kachinas. I just want to know more. So if you have anything you know about Kachinas or would like to share, I would love to hear about it in the comments. Just please be respectful. I'm looking forward to researching the Anasazi in my next video. I'm looking forward to doing a live stream with my friend, an interview. And so if you're interested in those things, stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time. Bye.